Penguinz0 and Dr. Respect just had a debate, and the brain rot takes that I heard from both sides made me want to crash out and made me wish that I was the Asian guy who got smacked in the ears by Homelander. To give you an idea as to how brained that debate livestream was in general, here's a clip of a random streamer who out of curiosity decided to tune in to that debate. And this is the first thing he heard.
Belly fat every single day just
What?
by tweaking
Belly
the morning
fat?
brew. New research.
Oh, in the 1800s when it was the age of 10, that was fine. Legally back then, they were not a parent. Today, legally, they are a parent.
Wait, when was the age of consent?
Imagine going on a random stream and the first thing you hear is, oh, by the way, 200 years ago, the age of consent was 10 years old. So how about we bring it back down to that? Like what? I'm not gonna lie, I have to give props to Coco. I've never seen someone as consistent as Coco when it comes to defending PDFL behavior. In fact, you know something's wrong when this guy is more consistent than EDP when it comes to the idea that kids should be able to get clapped by adults and adults should be able to marry children. Because even someone like EDP, a huge YouTuber who was proven to be a PDFL,
Let this be known, I am not a
decided to switch up and call out Chris Tyson for his PDFL behavior.
Chris Tyson supports child. He's into that freak. We gotta protect our kids from weird freak like this, you feel me?
This PDFL friendly fire is crazy. But yeah, props to Coco for consistently sticking up to his PDFL beliefs throughout the years. But I don't think it's the flex he thinks it is.
Cuties last night, and it was pretty good. It's a pretty good movie. I went in ready to hate like everybody else. I saw the cover, and I got clickbaited.
Huh? What you mean you got clickbaited? So you're telling me you wanted that picture to be the main content of the movie? Yeah, this creep right there, officer.
Are you going to start arguing that we should be able to start wedding 12-year-olds? Like, is 12 too young?
That's not the point. I'm saying, you're saying that the U.S. defined adult as 18. Well, I'm saying 200 years ago, the age of marriage in America was 10.
Let's discuss the brain rot that we just heard. As I've said, Coco has been a big advocator for the age of consent being reduced all the way down to whatever age the development of a child is complete.
We should encourage marriage when people reach maturity. That makes much more logical
That's
sense.
even more vague, though. Like, but also, you directly
It's vague
did
because
say
it's
to me
different for
that
everybody.
When someone,
So that can be, I don't know, 15 years.
There are
we're talking globally. Let's just talk globally. Like, do you think it is okay for? I'm not talking about just you specifically anymore. Anyone. Do you think it's okay for anyone in their 20s, an adult, to marry a 15 or 16-year-old?
a 21-year-old. If there was a marriage where the father consented and the daughter consented, and it was both good on both families, and they wanted to do it, why am I going to get involved? Why should we get the government involved? Why would I tell them if everybody's consenting, if everybody's okay with it, if the parents are okay with it, if nobody's being harmed, if it's going to be okay, if they're both abiding by the rules and they're not hurting each other, why not?
10-year-olds.
200 years ago in the 1800s in America, the age of marriage.
We can't live like that. We're so much more advanced than that. Why would we play by those rules? Because at that point, are you going to start arguing that we should be able to start wedding 12-year-olds? Like, is 12 too young?
That's not the point. I'm saying, you're saying that the U.S. defined adult as 18. Well, I'm saying 200 years ago, the age of marriage in America was 10, and the UK was 7.
The fact that Dr. Respect did all this research and went all the way back to hundreds of years ago to find a time period that aligns with his PDFL ideologies should at the very least give you some idea as to how brain dead Coco is in the head.
To go back to that question, is 12 too young? Do you think 12 is too young?
I think 12 is too young for me. Yes.
Well,
For you! I want you guys to understand the importance of him specifying that 12-year-old is too young for him. That tells me that in Coco's head, he can find a way to rationalize how a grown-ass adult could marry a 12-year-old. Something you'll notice with Dr. Respect is that you'll never say a specific age when it comes to the age of clapping or the age of marriage. And the reason for that is because he wants it to be as flexible as possible. But when you start analyzing all the red flags about Coco, such as him spending so much time of his life researching hundreds of years in history to finally find an age of consent that aligns with his PDFL beliefs, or him taking so much time and energy to defend the PDFL movie Cuties, and even going as far as to say that it was his favorite movie, you start to understand very quickly what kind of person Coco is. As a matter of fact, Dr. Respect is so sus that the moment you start pressuring him to saying an actual specific age that should be the age of consent, he starts stuttering really quick.
Here's an easy question. Listen, okay, so should we update or not? What do you think the age of consent should be, Sneako?
Yeah, this is not an important conversation.
No, it's a super important. You don't think kids are not as an important conversation? What do you think the age of consent should be? If you want to be consistent, you don't think anything updates, just tell us what you think it should be.
I think it should be past at a developed age.
What is a developed age? If you had to set a law for it, what would you set it? What would you set it about?
I'd say it's a developed age.
No, answer the question, you holy. You're such a cowardly. Stand up for what you believe. What should the age of consent be?
You see how
Coco has one job to do, which is to make people like Chris Tyson proud of him, but he can't even do that. He can't say what's truly on his mind without stuttering.
You see how
You see how you want to answer the question? You see how he's going to yap and not answer the question? I'm going to ask the same thing when you're done. Go ahead.
I just answered the question. I just told
What
you.
was the age?
I just told you at a developed age.
Sneako thinks you should be able to 9-year-olds. That's what Sneako thinks, and he won't answer that question honestly.
To be fair, I think this streamer is exaggerating a little bit. I think 9 years might be a little bit too young for Sneako, but 10 years old? Woo! Well, that's enough for a PDFL who's pushing 30 can't refuse now, is it?
200 years ago, the age of marriage in America was 10.
Why are we going back hundreds of years ago? How does that help us? Are we moving forward or backward? Are we really arguing here that the age of clapping should be 10 years old or even 5 years old? Because remember, according to Cuckoo, it's all relative. Every kid is different. Every kid develops at a different age, so Cuckoo can't even pin down an age range. But I really want you guys to understand how brain dead and flawed the argument of going back hundreds of years ago to find a specific time period where the norms back then align with your beliefs is. Let's play Cuckoo's game for a second. Let's assume that the argument that he made, the argument that, oh, but 200 years ago, the age of clapping was 10 years old. Let's assume that's a good argument. Okay, well, if we use that very same logic, we also need to remember that 200 years ago, sleep was seen as a good, normal, beneficial, if you had the right skin color back then thing. Does that mean we need to bring it back? Of course not! Or even better, a couple thousands of years ago, being an obese burger was seen as a good thing. It was the beauty standard to be obese back then. Does that mean then we need to bring back obesity being the beauty standard again then? No! But the point is, we do not need to bring back some things from the past, and the age of clapping being 10 years old is one of them. Another big point that Dr. Cuckrespect makes is how the development age of a child is different. Like every child is different, right? Like some children are gonna go through puberty at, let's say, 12 years old and finish that puberty stage at, let's say, 16 years old. While some other kids are gonna start their puberty at like 9 years old and finish it at 15 years old. And of course, that's a scientific fact. You cannot argue against that fact. But whatever comes next out of that cuck's mouth is what needs to be argued against. Let me tell you exactly why this is such a dumb take.
We should encourage marriage when people reach maturity. That makes much more logical
That's
sense.
even more vague, though. But also, you directly
It's vague
did
because
say
it's
to me
different for
that
everybody.
When someone
If we make the age of clapping a flexible age, then what's going to prevent a PDF file saying, I clapped this 8-year-old because their development age was completed, or so I thought. That's the exact reason why the age of clapping should not be flexible. Also, let's say your development age is over at 12. Does that mean you can marry someone who's 30 years old now? Of course not! If you're a normal human being, you know that your development age does not matter when it comes to your mental capabilities. You can be 12 years old, be able to give birth. That does not mean you should be able to marry someone who's 30, someone who's 20. I'm of the idea that having a baseline, having a specific number be the age of consent, is a good idea to prevent Chris Tyson's from exploiting that flexible law. And 18, in my opinion, when it comes to maturity and mental capabilities, is a good baseline number. I know that some people are gonna say in the comments, oh, but in my state, in my country, the age of clapping is 12 years old. I don't give a Sleeper to this day is still legal in some parts of the world. Doesn't make it right one bit. The mental capabilities and the maturity of someone who's 12 years old is completely different than someone who's 18. So I don't give a if you can give birth at 12 years old. If your development stage is over at 12 years old, you should not get married with a grown-ass man.
you think it's okay for anyone in their 20s, an adult, to marry a 15 or 16.
A 21-year-old, if there was a marriage where the father consented and the daughter consented, and it was both good on both.
If the parents and the kid consent, even though kids cannot consent. Oh, wait, my fault. I forgot that Cuckoo is a time traveler from the 1800s, where the age of consent in this country is 10 years old.
And the daughter consented.
Cuckoo. Boy, go sit back down in your cuck chair and go watch prisoners run a train on Chris Tyson. Sneako or anyone else will never be able to convince me that a 15-year-old can consent to marrying someone in their 20s, in their 30s. If you're a normal human being watching this video right now, I want you to ask yourself this very simple question. What could a 20 or 30-year-old man possibly have in common with a 12-year-old who can give birth? Nothing! But this is the kind of lobotomized individual we're dealing with. And someone like Coco, who is literally holding a losing position from the get-go, should be easy to beat in the debate. And it should be an easy win for Penguinz0. Right? Now look, I know we've been going hard at Coco, rightfully so by the way. I personally have zero respect for people who hold the belief that kids as low as 10 years old should be able to marry adults. But don't get the wrong idea. This whole video is not gonna be me riding Penguinz0's meat, bruh. Remember what I said earlier. Coco is literally holding a losing position by default, and sadly, Penguinz0 managed to fumble hard in that debate.
Do you believe that somebody can go through hormone therapy? Can they change their gender if they're a child?
I think that's totally fine as long as everyone is consenting, as you agree with.
Okay, so as long as everyone...
If your parents are okay with it, and you are okay with it, I think that's totally a familial decision to make, yeah.
Okay, so a child can cut their penis off and take hormone blockers and change their biology forever, but they can't get married?
Well, that's a decision that now extends beyond the family, because now you're bringing in a different party. So if you have someone that's your age coming in saying, I want to marry that child, I don't think that can happen under any circumstance.
So,
no.
But it's still a personal decision. You're still deciding.
Because there's
take the other party out of the equation. It's a personal
It's
decision. If I'm 16 and I personally want to marry this girl, she's beautiful. She's 21 years old. Her family wants to do it. My family wants to do it. You're saying I can't do that. We're both. I'm ready to go. I'm physically mature, but I'm not allowed to marry because Moy says that woman's a. But if then the next day I leave it, I'm depressed. I want to cut my off. I can go right into the clinic, snip it off, and start taking HRT like Chris Tyson. That's a society that makes sense to you?
It is. I believe everyone has I believe everyone has the right to do with their body what they want to do.
Oh.
I genuinely feel that someone busted inside Penguinz0's brain right before the debate. That's the only way this whole argument from Penguinz0 made sense. And it's so frustrating because Cucko is absolutely brain dead. So losing the Cucko in this argument is definitely going to unlock a core memory for Penguin. Now I understand why Penguinz0 said over and over again that he is not a debater. Because if you're gonna fumble against someone who literally has a losing position by default, then you're cooked. Alright, bruh. This is my opinion. And when it comes to this specific matter, there's my opinion and there's being wrong. Make no mistake, this is not me egoing right now or having a big ego. I'm wrong about a lot of things, okay? But when it comes to this specific matter, I think that what I'm gonna say is something that we should all be able to agree on. If you're a normal human being watching this video right now, I think we can all agree when I say that if there is an age of consent, there should be an age of transitioning. Let me be clear, so there's no misunderstanding. When I say age of transitioning, I'm saying there should be an age where you should be allowed to start injecting yourself with blockers and whatnot. And that age of transitioning should also dictate when you're able to snap that pee-pee. If we all agree that kids are not mentally there to consent to sus activities, then we also agree that kids are not mentally there to fully understand the permanent consequences of injecting themselves with gender-affirming medication or the permanent consequences of snapping your glizzy off. And I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I wanted to be a lot of different things. One day, I'd want to be a doctor. Next day, I'd want to be a competitive dog eater. Point is, we can all agree that kids are very indecisive. Make no mistake, when I say age of transitioning, I'm talking about surgeries, medication, all of that. I am fully aware that, being trans is something that takes years for you to fully understand, and it's not something that, when you're 18 years old, suddenly you're trans. But this reinforces my point of having an age of transitioning. If you turn 18 years old and you still have the exact same desire that you had when you were 8 years old, then go ahead. Cut your glizzy. As a matter of fact, I'll do it for you, like, come here. So I'm sorry, but I'm gonna say it how it is. When Penguin said, oh yeah, if the parents can to the kid injecting themselves with transition blockers or whatever, like, no, that was a brain dead take. One of the worst things that can happen to a kid, in my opinion, is thinking that you want to do something, be something, inject yourself, and then permanently having to live with those decisions, even if you do end up regretting that decision you made when you were a kid.
Making that decision for that child's life. If that's the path they want to go down, it's like choosing a sport.
What? How is choosing to play basketball as a kid, just to find out years later that you don't actually like basketball but you prefer soccer instead, being able to drop basketball and picking up soccer without any consequences, the same thing as cutting your glizzy off or injecting yourself as a kid with gender-affirming medication, with HRT, just to find out years later that you don't actually want to transition. Unlike switching sports, you can't undo the consequences that injecting yourself with gender-affirming medication as a kid did to your body. And as far as I know, you can't regrow back your glizzy. If a kid cannot consent to being clapped by an adult, then a kid cannot consent to having his glizzy snapped. You're stuck with that changed body type permanently. No, I'm sorry, just hearing that sport analogy made me want to crash out for a second. But who do you guys think won that brain rot debate? Cucko or Penguinz0? Or none of them and they both had brain dead takes? Money, money, money.